one labeled teaching. All right, rock and roll. See, the people are flocking in right now. You know, I gotta say, like when a dude has his own coffee cup, he looks like he's got things under control. A couple of years ago, I met a friend here in the neighborhood. He's since moved away, which is kind of sad, but met a friend here in the neighborhood, and we were walking up our kids to school together. You know, he over there, me over here, and every morning he had his traveler mug that he was walking with, and I'm like, I haven't had a chance to make coffee. This dude looked like he's got it together, you know. So I met him. His name was Anthony. He's a really, really cool guy. Yeah, it's just that's the impression that I get. So all you guys walking in with your travel mugs and a smile on your face, I say, well done, well done. And you were here almost as early as I was, so, you know. Well, what was that? Good night's sleep. That sounds like a great idea. I should do that. Good morning, class. I'm so glad to be here with you today. A little bit of brief housekeeping. Number one, remember this is a donut-free zone. So if you have a donut, make sure you cram it in your mouth as fast as possible. I'm just kidding. Sit down. Russell gets a pass. Mostly it's just you. I'm just targeting you personally. We are continuing our study of the book of Genesis, and I'm of the understanding that the live stream didn't have sound last week, so we're not going to cover all the same ground, but we'll spend a little bit of time just reviewing what it was. So, of course, the book of Genesis is a book of beginnings. That's what Genesis means. It begins in the beginning, and by in the beginning, we mean the beginning of everything that is, except God himself, because he has no beginning and he has no end, which is what qualifies him to be the beginning and the end. So we get the story of creation. We have an appearance of the Trinity during the story of creation. God makes man to be in communion with him. Gives him a special place in creation. Was that? Oh, thank you. I will just brush off that comment as unimportant. Look, I'm just trying to do my part. God made man with a special place in creation. He made man in his own image, gave him dominion over this world of ours, and along with that, the injunction to promote life. It was also not good that man should be alone, so God made for him woman. And the two fit together perfectly. And in the immortal words of Jerry Maguire that he stole from a couple of deaf people during that movie, they complete each other. Interesting, just as a little bit of an aside, and most wives will understand this, the woman was made because the man needed her. Yep. Wasn't quite that. It is interesting, though, that the text in Hebrew and the text in English actually read pretty parallel because, and this wouldn't work in every language, but it's nice that it works in both of these languages. It says that God presented the woman to the man. Well, God presented Eve to the man, And when he looked at her, he said, "Whoa, man, like, woman, right?" In Hebrew, the word for man is ish, and the word for woman is isha. So he saw her, it's like, oh, isha, you know. Anyways, they are these complementary halves, and yet at the same time, though they were in paradise, they were still not content to let all that is God's belong to God, and to claim only for themselves what God had given to them, although He'd given them everything that is good. So they seized for themselves fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and in so doing, they gained the knowledge of good in the sense that they gained the knowledge of evil, and they were then able to differentiate between the two. All that they had known was good, but much like I don't know if the fish knows what water is until he's been pulled onto your boat, so too, I don't know if Adam and Eve understood good, just like they probably didn't understand death. God told them, for the day that you eat it, you will surely die. What did that mean to them? No. Anyways, I don't have time to dwell this far back. We'll keep moving. So the fall into sin, and sin's effects are immediate and immense. And in the second generation of humans, we have the first murder. So Cain kills Abel out of jealousy for Abel's relationship with God, basically. And yet God had called Cain to repentance before it happened as a warning. And God after the fact, still showed his care for Cain and protection. Even though Cain was sort of exiled, well, he was exiled, and yet God put a mark upon him and said that he would protect him. That is not a wake-up call to humanity, because wickedness just continues to increase rapidly. And people are living nearly 1,000 years, right? So that's a long time for sin to fester and roil in a human heart. I don't think that 900 years of practice made them any better at being human. In fact, the days described were ever increasingly wicked, so much so that God decided to start new. So he sent the flood, rescuing a small handful of people and the creatures to restart the world, and he did. Shortly after the story of the flood, we get the story of the Tower of Babel, where people, again, seem to have felt like they have outgrown their need for God, right? Through technological advancements, they seek to make a name for themselves and to protect their legacy, to sort of immortalize themselves, and maybe even to find a route to heaven that doesn't depend upon God, right? The ancient aliens person that lives in the back of my brain likes to imagine the Tower of Babel was a rocket ship. That's probably not true. Yeah, well, that guy's full of it. Okay. It doesn't really matter. It's a tower. It's a tower with the intention of getting to heaven, but more so immortalizing themselves for posterity. Well, in their minds, those probably weren't far differentiated. Yeah, because we have walked on the moon. This far predates all. We've known this for a long time, but our view of the cosmos is a lot different than the first people, most likely, right? And so the idea that heaven is up is useful it would be difficult for us to say, as some religions try to do, oh, that's right. That's because God lives on the planet of, in the Sirius region, like, whatever. No, that's not how heaven works. But especially for ancient people, just thinking up is where God is makes a lot of sense. Right? And God, in some ways, accommodates that way of thinking. Right? When Jesus ascends into heaven, right? Yeah, yeah. My sentiment is it's probably more about approaching the throne of God. I'm not even sure that was like a top priority for them exactly, but more just an indication of what's on their heart. And the reason why I think it's probably the sort of throne room of God idea is the heart behind it, right? Like I don't think that detail would be included in the story if it was just like, and they wanted to make a tower that was just very, very tall. You know what I mean? It seems like what's being revealed is people desiring um, what Adam and Eve wanted to be like God in ways that God did not design them to be. He made Adam and Eve in his image. That's God-like enough. You know, a little aside. I probably never made this connection for you. Let me just make it for you real quickly. Um, you have heard me talk about before the idea that the law is God's design for creation, and sin is when we move against God's design. Right? Just a very simple, broad way of understanding sin. Well, that's exactly what Adam and Eve were doing when they said, oh, we want to be more like God than God made us to be. And that's the same thing that's happening at the Tower of Babel. Why is it sinful? Because they're deviating from God's perfect design. All right, Tower of Babel, and then shortly we get into the story of Abraham and Sarah and their midlife crisis that happens at the age of 75. And it is midlife for them because they both live to be quite elderly. And you'll know God's continued promises to Abraham, which calls for faith. And that faith is expressed firstly in waiting patiently on the Lord, which Abraham and Sarah don't always do. Secondly, that call to faith should be trusting in God's protection, which Abraham frequently fails to do. But then sometimes he does. Through the life of Abraham, we see that God is faithful even when Abraham is not. But also we see a growth of faith over the life of Abraham. And as Abraham begins to see God's promises fulfilled, that only strengthens his faith in God. And in the latter years of his life, it is his legacy as the person on whom God has put his favor that Abraham leaves behind. The people of Canaan don't want to sell him a place to bury his wife. They want to give it to him because he is so respected, not for his own wisdom, not for his own might, but because they have seen that his God is powerful, that his God has blessed him. Late in life, Abraham and Sarah do have a son. His name is Isaac. And y'all know the story of, we've covered many times, the story of Abraham being called to sacrifice Isaac, but then God ransoming him back by providing his own sacrifice. Isaac, as he's growing into being a man, Sarah doesn't want him marrying any of the local Canaanite women. They're no good for him. So Isaac goes back to Haran and marries Rebecca, a girl from back home. And somebody who, in theory, aligns better with who they want to be as a family. Isaac and Rebekah they also have to wait a while before their children come. And as God blesses them with twins and tells Rebekah that the older will serve the younger. And the boys are contentious. They're they're struggling with each other. They're wrestling with each other in her womb. And it's worrisome for her. But, God says it's fine. The boys will be fine. It's going to be okay. Once the boys are born, Esau comes out hairy and red and wearing a football helmet. Like, he's a sportsman, a huntsman. He's the kind of guy that Dad really digs. Jacob comes out grabbing Esau's heel, sort of catching a ride with Esau. And this probably has some symbolic value in addition to being what just happened. Life is like that sometimes, where things happen, but you can also kind of interpret what that means. So Jacob is considered to be crafty and kind of a cheater. And he has a reputation as being the heel grabber, right? The one who will trip up Cain. Not Cain, sorry, Esau. And he does. So we know about how he has taken Esau's birthright and has defrauded Isaac into giving him Esau's blessing as well. And he flees to Haran to find a wife. That's sort of the cover story. In Haran, he falls in love with Rachel. He works 7 years to marry Rachel, and the time flies by because he is so in love. And on his wedding night, he marries the son of Laban, Leah. Leah, yeah. And in the morning, he's aghast, and I'm sure Leah is super thrilled that he's aghast, or however that worked out. And Laban convinced them to work another 7 years to marry the daughter he actually was intending to marry in the first place. And then he works from another 6-ish years to build up a nest egg for them to have a life together. All the while, he's hoping that his brother Cain has finally let go of his murderous rage toward him. Eventually, Jacob, you all seen A Brother Where Art Thou? He done RUNNOFT, right? Then run off with the flocks and herds and so forth. And he gets reunited with Cain, but before he does, I'm sorry, Esau. Thank you. I keep doing this. They're played by the same actor in my brain. I don't know. There's a limited cast in there. But before he is able to reunite with Esau, he wrestles with an angel. And the angel wounds him. And over this whole thing, he has been brought low and taken advantage of, and his character has been changing over time. And he comes back with humility and puts himself at his brother's mercy, literally. And but they have a beautiful reunion. His brother has forgiven him, it seems. And Jacob and his many, many sons, Jacob, whose name is now Israel, they find a spot and settle down. Of the many sons that he has, 2 were born to his favored wife, Rachel. The first was Joseph, and the second was Benjamin. And when Benjamin was born, Rachel did not survive childbirth can be a very scary and difficult thing. And Rachel didn't survive. So now all that he has left of his favorite wife are Joseph and Benjamin. Joseph is his favorite, and he treats him like a favorite, and that gives Joseph the posture and attitude of somebody who is the favorite. All the other brothers know that he's the favorite. He gets to wear fancy clothes. He gets to spy on them and manage them. And on top of all that, he starts having these dreams about how all his brothers will bow down to him, and even his parents will bow down to him. And everybody's over Joseph at this point. And so when the opportunity arises, his brothers conspire to kill him and make it look like it was an accident. They strip him of his fancy coat, dip it in some animal blood, and they intend to bring it back and show Dad and say, hey, we found this. What do you think it means? But cooler heads prevail. Reuben encourages them to toss him in a dry well, basically, and leave him. That way, I don't know, I guess that way he can just starve to death or die of thirst. But Reuben's actual plan is he wants to sneak back later and take him home. But they've tossed him in the pit. Reuben is out, and there are some Ishmaelite luxury goods merchants coming through. And Judah says, actually, we don't really benefit much from him dying here. Why don't we just sell him off? And they do. So they sell him for 20 shekels. And Joseph is taken by the Ishmaelites to Egypt. And that is where he is sold to a man named Potiphar. Potiphar, and anybody remember what Potiphar's job is? Captain of Pharaoh's guard. And Joseph does very well in Potiphar's house, with the exception that Potiphar's wife makes life terrible for him, puts him in a no-win situation. And he does no-win. Eventually, that situation escalates to the point that she accuses him of assault. She has her evidence in the garment that she stripped off of him as he fled from her. And so what's Potiphar to do? He's kind of stuck in this situation. So he says, you know what? Put him in prison. Prison that he actually oversees. So he takes the great house manager who had solved his domestic life, takes him to prison and says, okay, well, why don't you're here now. And he talks to the warden basically and says, just put this guy in charge of anything. It'll work. And it does. So he's doing really well. And so one day he's coming through the prison, making his rounds, I guess, and he sees there's two servants that look sad, or two prisoners who look sad. And so he says to them, hey, but why are you sad? What they didn't say is, because we're in prison, dummy. Which might indicate to us that Joseph's time in prison has actually been a blessing for all the prisoners. Right? Like, so much so that when they're having a bad day, he can tell. And he cares. So he talks to them. He says, well, okay, what's up? What happened? And they're like, well, we had dreams last night, and they felt significant. So, well, tell me your dreams, and we'll see if God has anything to say about it. So they do, and to the cupbearer, he says, oh, yeah, that dream, that's great. What it means is that in 3 days, Pharaoh is going to take you out of prison and lift up your head and restore you to where you were. And the baker, hearing this, says, okay, well, would you interpret my dream for me? He says, yes, in 3 days, Pharaoh will come and lift up your head. He's going to hang you. And some unpleasant things about birds will happen to you. Oh, I don't like the sound of that. We did say, we did have a little bit of a discussion about, well, couldn't Joseph have just lied to make him feel better? Because he's going to die either way, right? But Joseph tells him the truth. He's committed to the truth, and that will matter. So 3 days hence, the cupbearer is restored, the baker is executed, and the cupbearer does not remember to put in a good word for Joseph. That's how it goes sometimes. Fast forward a little while, and now Pharaoh is having his own dreams. And he calls all of the wise men in Egypt, all the magicians and interpreters and efficiency consultants, or I don't know, whatever, right? And he's like, hey, who can explain to me what this dream is? And the text says nobody could. Now, I did wonder, is that nobody tried? Or people did, and Pharaoh kind of was like, no, I don't think that's what it means. I'm not sure. But eventually, the cupbearer goes, actually, I know a guy. He told me that, my dream was going to come true, and it did, and maybe I'd go get him. So, that's what they did. They sent for Joseph. They shaved him, cleaned him up, made him look proper for the court. He comes in to talk to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh tells him about his dream. And I was unable to listen to the recording from last week, so I'm not sure where we left off. I think we got through Pharaoh telling his dream and then just about to Joseph interpreting. Is that right? Great. All right, so Pharaoh had these two dreams, right? The first is about cows. There's 7 plump cows. Attractive cows is what it says. And they're all down by the Nile having a grand old bovine time. And then these ugly, skinny cows show up and eat them. And I guess they're still skinny at the end. But that's the story, And that's alarming. Pharaoh doesn't feel good about that. So he woke up in the middle of the night. He tried to get back to sleep, and he had another dream then. He's got this, stalks of grain, and they're good. There's 7 of them. They're looking good. And then 7 shriveled up ones consume them. And then he doesn't get back to sleep. And so he's explained all this to Joseph. And here's what he says. Pharaoh said to Joseph, this is verse 15, I have had a dream, and there's no one who can interpret it. I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Joseph replied, it is not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. This is important to note, right? Joseph does not claim special knowledge or special talent. He points toward God as the one who is able to do this. Same thing he said to the prisoners before he interpreted their dreams. He is not claiming himself. He is claiming God, right? And he said, God will give you a favorable interpretation. And after hearing those dreams, I think, what could possibly be favorable about these nightmares that he had? And the question I left you with in the class last week was, would it be better to have true bad news or false good news? It was a question that we raised back when he was interpreting the dream for the baker. And here it is again. Is it better to have bad news that's true or good news that's false? We would prefer to have good news that's true. I would say that The testimony of Scripture throughout is that truth is preferable, even if it's unpleasant. Truth is. You can do something with truth. With bad news that's true, you can at least try to make the best decision you can. False good news does nothing other than leave you unprepared for what comes next. Verse 17. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Behold, in my dream I was standing on the banks of the Nile. 7 cows, plump and attractive, came out of the Nile and fed in the reed grass. 7 other cows came up after them, poor and very ugly, thin, such as I had never seen in all the land of Egypt." It's hard for me to not hear the president's voice talking about this. Ugly cows, never seen them before, never in these places. Very important that he protects your image of Egypt here, right? We've never seen ugly, thin cows in Egypt. And the thin, ugly cows ate up the first 7 plump cows. But when they had eaten them, no one would have known that they had eaten them, for they were still as ugly as at the beginning. Then I awoke. I also saw in my dream 7 ears growing on one stalk, full and good. 7 ears, withered, thin, and blighted by the east wind, sprouted after them. And the thin ears swallowed up the 7 good ears. And I told it to the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, "The dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do." So is this favorable news? If you know what's coming, at least you can do something about it. Verse 26, the 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dreams are one. The 7 lean and ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty blighted by 7 ears. The 7 empty ears blighted by the east wind are also 7 years of famine. As it is, as I told Pharaoh, God has shown to Pharaoh what he is about to do. There will come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. But after them there will arise 7 years of famine, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt. The famine will consume the land, and the plenty will be unknown in the land by reason of the famine that will follow, for it will be very severe. And the doubling of Pharaoh's dream means that the thing is fixed by God, and God will shortly bring it about. So I think probably we were on board with the first part of the interpretation where he broke down what all the symbols are. The doubling of the dream means that this thing is fixed by God. So what he's saying to Pharaoh is, this is not a repent or else famine will come situation. This is not a, if you curry favor with God, he will prevent the calamity. The way that God has revealed this to you is to let you know that this is going to happen. It is going to happen. And yet, aren't you fortunate that God is letting you know that this is going to happen? Verse 33. Now, therefore, let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh proceed to appoint overseers over the land and take 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt, during the 7 plentiful years. So not only does he have an interpretation for Pharaoh, he also has a plan of action. And where, oh where, might Pharaoh find an excellent manager to fill this role? Notably, Joseph does not say, God has revealed to you that you shall appoint me to this role. Joseph doesn't do that. Ever since he was sold off by his brothers, Joseph is more and more pointing people toward God than pointing at himself, even if people don't hear it. All right, 35. And let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. That food shall be a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine that are to occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish through the famine. This proposal pleased Pharaoh and all his servants. Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find a man like this in whom is the Spirit of God? Now this, I think, is fascinating. What is Pharaoh looking for in this sort of prime minister he's about to appoint? What qualifications is he looking for? Keep your Bible open. All questions I ask are open book. Yeah. You're looking for a man in whom is the Spirit of God. Pause for a moment with me. Do you know anything about Egyptian religion? Do you know anything about people's attitude towards the Pharaoh in Egypt? Yeah. The claim in ancient Egypt is that Pharaoh is one of the gods. He is divine. In him dwells divinity. This Pharaoh recognizes that the God of Joseph has something that all of the other magicians and mystics of his land do not. He's not looking for the most pedigreed or credentialed guy. He doesn't ask for a man of wisdom or even a man of good reputation. He says, where are we going to find somebody like this guy who has in him the Spirit of the God who has given me this vision? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has shown you all this, there is none so discerning and wise as you are. Check that out. Pharaoh says, what makes you wise is that God talks to you. Maybe what makes you discerning is that you hear when God speaks. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only as regards the throne will I be greater than you. Does that sound familiar? Well, we haven't got to Moses yet. What did Potiphar say to Joseph? See, I put you over all my house, and no one in this house shall be greater than you. And I give to you everything in my house except for my wife, which might have been him being nice, right? Um, Same thing happens in prison. Same thing happens with Pharaoh. And it's interesting because, maybe the scale has been growing too. I don't know for sure. I don't know how you compare Potiphar's household with the prison where Joseph was. But it kind of seems like God put him in the position. He got to learn about being a manager and shake the bugs out and all that kind of stuff. And then God gave him another opportunity. And now God set him up for the main event, as it were. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand. What's a signet ring for, anybody? What is a signet ring? To make a seal, right? It's a way of saying what has come down comes with my authority. You know how some places they have that rubber stamp with the signature? That's basically what he just did, right? He just gave to Joseph rubber stamp for Pharaoh's signature. He took his signet ring, put it on his hand, and put it on Joseph's hand, and clothed him in garments of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. When's the last time Joseph wore fine linen? Yeah. And it was being stripped of that sort of began his journey to the bottom. And he made him ride in his second chariot, and they called out before him, "Bow the knee." Thus he set him over all the land of Egypt. So let's take a quick snapshot of Joseph's story so far. In the beginning, Joseph was exalting himself. And because of that, the people around him couldn't stand him. And he was forcibly humbled, literally stripped and thrown in the pit, sold into slavery. Through that time of hardship, he gained humility and turned toward God. And since this time, whether people hear him or not, he has been actively trying to glorify God. Even back in Potiphar's house, where he's talking with Potiphar's wife, he's like, "I can't do this thing. It is a sin before my God." Right? In the prison, I can't interpret dreams, but I know the God who knows everything, and I'll ask him. Pharaoh's court. I don't have wisdom, but God does. He'll tell you what you need, right? So Joseph's early life, Joseph was about Joseph. After his humiliation, Joseph is about pointing toward God. It has made all the difference for him. Sorry? Similar to Jacob. That's right. Yes. The whole Bible is a book about humility, my friend. Yeah. If I had one firm word of advice for anybody seeking spiritual betterment, it would be get over yourself. Right? We can get to the end of the chapter. We're going to. Okay. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I'm Pharaoh, and without your consent, no one shall lift up hand or foot in all of Egypt." And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphanath-Paneah. And he gave him in marriage to Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. So Joseph went out over the land of Egypt. Potiphar the priest, Potiphar, not the same people, just to be clear. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh, went through all the land of Egypt. During the 7 plentiful years, the earth produced abundantly, and he gathered up all the food of those 7 years. which occurred in the land of Egypt, and put the food in the cities. He put in every city the food from the fields around it. And Joseph stored up grain in abundance, like the sand of the sea, until he ceased to measure it, for it could not be measured. I don't know if any of y'all remember the cartoon DuckTales. Scrooge McDuck is the richest duck in the world. You know what I'm talking about? He had this massive vault of gold coins that he would just dive and swim in, you know? And that's kind of what it was like. It's like so much grain. Now think about it. If you are a person who God did not give revelatory dreams to at this time, and it's just abundance upon abundance upon abundance, and you see your government hoarding it, I kind of wonder if this isn't the same, if people wouldn't have seen this the same way that Noah's neighbors saw him when he was building the ark. What are you doing? There's plenty for everyone, and there always will be. It's fine. But they were undeterred. And the 20% tax came in. It was good, right? Before the year of famine, 2 sons were born to Joseph. Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bore them to him. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for he said, God has made me forget all my hardship and all my father's house. The second he called Ephraim, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. 7 years of plenty that occurred in the land of Egypt came to an end. 7 years of famine began to come. As Joseph had said, there was famine in all the lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. When all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, go to Joseph. What he says to you, do. So when the famine was spread all over the land, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe in the land of Egypt. Moreover, all the earth came to Egypt, to Joseph, to buy grain, because the famine was severe over all the earth. Note, everybody was afflicted with famine. God put Egypt in a unique position. And I think that that might be somewhat telling for us to consider how God sometimes will work through the secular governments, right? He did not use Egypt as an evangelizing force, right? It seems like Pharaoh is kind of sort of sorting out faith, maybe, kind of, but it's not like, hey, come join our church and you can have some grain, right? It's just like God used a very powerful government with the means to do so to protect people broadly. But it also affords those who will hear to know that it is the God of Joseph who has made it possible for you to eat today. If anybody wants to know, hey, why do y'all have all these reserves? How did that happen? So there's opportunity perhaps for testimony, but it's not like forced upon them. But God also has some very personal reasons to do this too, and we'll get to those in our next time. We're 3.5 minutes over, so I got to wrap it up. But we will continue here, starting chapter 42 next week.